My family went bankrupt, and somehow, overnight, my life stopped being mine. It started with Sebastian Thorne, my best friend's older brother, deciding he was going to solve my family's problem the way he solved everything, quickly, decisively, without asking permission. My best friend, Isabel Thorne, tried to fight him. I can still hear her voice, sharp with outrage. "Sebastian, how could you do this to my best friend?" Her brother didn't even flinch. His expression stayed calm, unreadable. "You have a crush on her brother, don't you?" he said. "I had him brought here for you." Izzy's face transformed in an instant. Her eyes lit up like fireworks. "Oh. Well, in that case." "Wait," I cut in. I didn't agree to anything. Liam, my younger brother, and I were handling the fallout with a grim kind of calm. Not because we weren't scared, but because panic didn't pay bills. I was taking every commission I could get as a freelance illustrator, my tablet practically glued to my hands. Liam was pulling overtime as an architect, coming home with tired eyes and rolled-up sleeves, already thinking about the next project. The one person who absolutely refused to be calm was Izzy. She called me, practically screaming into the phone. "Chloe, are you okay? Are there loan sharks camped out on your lawn? Did they splash red paint on your door or something?" I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I'm fine, Izzy," I said, rubbing my forehead. "And maybe you should watch a little less TV." She ignored that completely. In her mind, I'd already been reduced to begging on a street corner. "Quick, give me your bank details. I'll wire you some money." "It's okay," I reassured her. "I'm fine. Don't worry." After another 10 minutes of dramatic wailing, she suddenly switched gears like a performer hitting her next cue. "Okay. I've been thinking, and I've come up with 3 possible solutions to save your family." Thinking she was finally about to be serious, I sat up straighter on my couch. "I'm listening." Izzy cleared her throat like she was about to present a business proposal. "Plan A," she declared. "I'll beg my brother to marry you." I stared at the wall for a second. Before the bankruptcy, my family's business had been successful. Comfortable. Respected. But compared to the Thorne family? We were tiny. The Thornes were old money, an empire that had only grown more formidable in recent years. And that was all thanks to Sebastian. Liam, Izzy, and I were the creative types. None of us had an ounce of business sense or any desire to take over our family companies. Sebastian was the complete opposite. In the business world, he was ruthless, decisive, and terrifyingly brilliant, a true titan of industry. I'd only met him a handful of times, but every time he'd felt like a walking glacier. Tall, sharp-featured, devastatingly handsome in the way people talked about in hushed tones. The kind of man who made rooms go quiet without even trying. Even Izzy, his own sister, was a little intimidated by him, though she'd never admit it out loud. She used to show up at my dorm, dramatic tears in her eyes, complaining, "Everyone else's brother is sweet and gentle. Why is mine so scary?" And then, 5 minutes later, if Sebastian tossed some money at her to make her go away, she'd snatch it with a grin. "Thanks, Seb. You're the best brother in the world." If his own sister sometimes flinched under his stare, what chance did I have? Besides, he had admirers from New York to Paris. Women with polished careers and perfect smiles. Why would he ever choose me? "I veto Plan A," I said immediately. "What's Plan B?" Izzy's voice jumped an octave, thrilled with herself. "Plan B is, I'll marry your brother." I actually choked a little. "Izzy." "Listen," she insisted. "Liam is." "I know what Liam is," I said, rubbing my temple. "He's my brother." Liam was quiet and reserved. The classic cool, aloof campus heartthrob. All through school, girls were constantly asking me to pass love letters to him, like I was his personal assistant. Izzy and I met during our junior year of college. As we grew closer, we started visiting each other's homes. The first time she saw Liam, she fell hard. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes lit up. She grabbed my hand and whispered like she was in a romance movie. "Chloe, I think I just met my Prince Charming." "This is my brother," I'd introduced. "What?" She got even more excited. "This is perfect. It's fate, Chloe. Fate. Liam gave her one weary look and walked away. I tried to warn her gently. Izzy. Are you sure? Liam is a tough nut to crack. I had seen him turn down more than one girl without even raising his voice. But Izzy didn't listen. She launched a full-scale campaign, bold, relentless, dramatic. So far, it hadn't worked. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore and asked Liam myself, do you really not like Izzy? She's amazing. She's beautiful and fun and cheerful. Liam didn't answer. He just handed me a freshly peeled apple like that was his entire opinion. Eat your apple, he said, and stop asking questions. Deep down, I really hoped they'd get together. Liam might not be a man of many words, but he was the best brother anyone could ask for. When I first heard about the bankruptcy, I'd been terrified. Liam was out of town for work, but he rushed back overnight. He found me sitting in a daze, paperwork spread across the table like a battlefield, and put a steady hand on my shoulder. It's okay, Chloe, he said quietly. I'm here. Just hearing that had kept me from falling apart. But a crush was one thing. Our family was under immense pressure. Marrying into the Thorns, into Izzy, was out of the question. So plan B is a no-go, I said. Izzy sighed dramatically like the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Well, she said, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, that only leaves plan C. My stomach tightened. What is it? Maybe we should just elope. I blinked. Once. Twice. As ridiculous as it sounded, it somehow felt more plausible than the first two options. Still, I turned her down. Why are all your plans about one of us marrying one of you? I demanded. To make us family, of course, Izzy said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Besides, my family is loaded. We could pay all your debts in a heartbeat. She had a point, and I hated that she did. Then she suddenly gasped. Wait. Don't you have a childhood fiancé or something? I groaned. No. Yes you do, she insisted. Noah. That boy who followed you around like a puppy. Noah. Our families had lived next door to each other when we were kids. Noah had been my shadow, trailing after me everywhere. Our parents used to joke that we should just get married when we grew up. It had never been real. It was just adults teasing children. But when my family went bankrupt, Noah showed up at my door looking frantic. Chloe, he blurted, I told my parents we have to honor our engagement, but they won't agree. I'm still trying to convince them. Just wait for me. Wait for you? I repeated, baffled. He puffed out his chest like a hero in a play. I won't break things off just because your family is broke. I stared at him, completely lost. Noah. We weren't even together. Of course we were, he insisted, eyes wide with conviction. My dad said so himself when I was 5. Our families were going to be joined. He wouldn't listen to anything I said. He ran off shouting, wait for me. Over his shoulder, leaving me standing there with the door half open and my brain spinning. I kept meaning to sit him down and explain things properly, but after the bankruptcy, life became a whirlwind of paperwork and phone calls and trying not to drown. Thankfully, most of it was eventually sorted out. The debt didn't vanish, but it became manageable. Liam and I just worked, overtime, late nights, weekends, paying it down bit by bit. I took on a flood of private commissions. Liam constantly traveled for projects and came home exhausted. Seeing how worn down I was, Izzy decided she was going to save me. She insisted on dragging me away from my endless pile of sketches for a weekend getaway. Come on, please, she begged. It's my brother's new mountain villa. We can watch the sunset. It's gorgeous. I tried to say no. I really did. But Izzy was Izzy, and eventually I caved. Okay, I sighed. Fine. That weekend, we drove up to the villa. It was perched on a mountaintop, lavishly decorated, with a breathtaking view that made you feel like the world had paused just for you. What do you think? Izzy said, pulling me along. Isn't it amazing? I nodded, unable to help it. I begged my brother to let me throw a party here, but he always said no, she continued. This time, when I told him I wanted to bring you for a vacation, he had a rare moment of mercy and actually agreed. On the second floor there was a huge observation deck overlooking lush green mountains. Izzy and I sprawled on recliners, letting the wind brush over our skin, watching the sun slide slowly across the sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt my stress start to melt away. After a while, Izzy went downstairs to grab the desserts she'd been baking. I stayed behind, lying there alone, eyes half closed. Then I heard footsteps. I turned my head and froze. Sebastian. Izzy hadn't mentioned he'd be here. I fumbled, suddenly unsure what to call him, and just stared up at him dumbly as he approached. He stopped beside my chair and spoke first. "How have you been holding up?" His voice snapped me out of my trance. I'm okay," I managed. He studied my face like he was cataloging the truth behind my words. "You like it here?" "I love it," I admitted, then tried to lighten the moment with a joke. "The view is so incredible it's completely cleared my head. If only I could live here forever." I meant it as a casual remark. Sebastian replied without hesitation. "You can." I blinked. "What?" "You can live here forever." He looked down at me, and for once his intimidating aura seemed quieter, softened by something serious in his eyes. "All you have to do is marry me." For a second, I was sure I'd misheard him. I blinked again, then waved my hands quickly. I was kidding. "I'm not," he said. My heart thudded, confused and startled all at once. I remembered Izzy's plan A and wondered if she'd actually asked him. But Sebastian wasn't the type to do things just because his sister wanted him to. "Marry me," he repeated. "You can name your terms." I tried to speak, but my thoughts tangled. I don't think so." A faint frown creased his brow, the clearest sign of displeasure I'd seen on him. He was about to say something else when Izzy came back up with a plate of cake. She looked between us, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Passing through," Sebastian said smoothly. "I'm leaving soon." He turned to go, then paused and looked back at me. "Think about it," he said. When he was gone, Izzy stared after him, baffled. "Passing through what? The middle of nowhere?" Then she turned to me, squinting. "What were you two talking about?" I swear my brother looks even more annoyed than usual. His iceberg face is extra frosty. I didn't know what to say. My mind was still stuck on his words. So I asked carefully, "Did you, by any chance, ask your brother to marry me?" "Nope," she said, shaking her head. I was going to, but then I saw his face and chickened out. I thought he'd tell me to get lost, so I dropped it. That only made me more confused. After that, Izzy kept dragging me on getaways, sometimes to a resort her brother had invested in, other times to one of his properties. "I don't know what's gotten into my brother lately," she'd say, laughing. "He's suddenly being nice to me. He says yes to everywhere I want to go. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth." I tried to refuse, but she was relentless. And every time, before agreeing, I made sure Sebastian wouldn't be there. Or at least, I tried. Our fourth trip was to a beach house he'd bought a year ago. Izzy said she'd only been allowed to stay there once since it was renovated. We ended up curled up in the home theater, watching a movie while the ocean murmured outside like a secret. Halfway through, Izzy complained of a stomachache and ran to the bathroom. I paused the movie to wait for her. But she wasn't the one who came back. It was Sebastian. Before I could even think of polite small talk, he cut straight to the point. "Have you made your decision?" I stared at him blankly. "Huh?" "Marrying me," he clarified. "I can pay off your family's debt." I didn't answer right away. If I was honest, the offer tempted me. Not because I wanted the marriage, but because I wanted the relief, the chance to breathe again without feeling like I was carrying my whole family on my back. My hesitation must have looked like refusal. His brow furrowed. "Why not? Is it because of that childhood fiancé of yours?" I was shocked Izzy had even mentioned Noah to him. "No," I said quickly. "That whole thing isn't." He didn't seem interested in the explanation. "Forget it," he said, voice flat. "It doesn't matter." Then, as if we were discussing weather, he handed me a warm glass of milk. "Drink," he said. "Oh. Okay." I took it because my brain was still trying to catch up with everything else. I sipped. The warmth spread through my chest. Finish it, he added. So I did, feeling oddly obedient under his steady gaze. When I handed it back, I tried to make a joke to break the tension. It tastes a little bitter. He murmured, taking the empty glass. Are you tired? Now that he mentioned it, I realized how exhausted I was, how my body had been running on fumes for weeks. The quiet room, the soft hum of the theater, the steady rhythm of the ocean outside. It all pressed down gently, like a blanket. I rubbed my eyes. Yeah. A little. My thoughts blurred at the edges, as if someone had dimmed the lights inside my head. My eyelids grew heavy, and the last thing I registered clearly was Sebastian's voice, low and strangely gentle. Go to sleep, he said. Dinner at Thorn Tower didn't feel like dinner. It felt like a performance. A black dress waited for me on the bed when I got home from work that evening, simple, elegant, clearly expensive. There was no note, but I didn't need one to know who it was from. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hung it back up, opened my own closet, and chose a dress I'd bought on clearance a year ago. Dark blue, clean lines, nothing flashy. I did my makeup myself, tied my hair back, and told my reflection, "You're going as you." The car Sebastian sent was already waiting outside my building, a sleek black thing with tinted windows that reflected the streetlights back at me. The driver opened the door with a polite, "Mrs. Thorne." I flinched at the title. On the ride over, I watched the city streak by, lights smearing into pale lines. I tried not to think about the headlines I'd seen that morning, the comments, the trending hashtags that had turned my name into fodder. When the elevator doors opened at the top floor of Thorn Tower, a hostess in a crisp uniform greeted me with a small bow of her head. "Mrs. Thorne," she said. "This way." The restaurant was not really a restaurant. It was a private dining room, all glass and soft lighting, with a view of the city that made everything below look small and manageable. Sebastian was already there, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. He turned as the hostess announced me and dismissed her with a nod. His gaze moved from my face down to my dress and back up. "You didn't wear what I sent," he said. "I'm aware," I replied, walking toward the table. "I own other clothes." Something almost like amusement flickered across his eyes, gone before I could catch it. He pulled out my chair. I hesitated, then sat. He took the seat opposite me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sounds were the muted clink of plates as silent servers appeared, set dishes before us, and disappeared again like trained ghosts. It was only after the first course had been poured in place that Sebastian spoke again. "You've seen the articles," he said. It wasn't a question. I cut my salmon into neat, unnecessary bites. Hard to miss when my name is trending under "Did she trap him?" and rich men's charity cases. Sebastian watched me with that unnervingly steady gaze. "And?" he asked. "And what?" I said. "How do you want to handle it?" I set my fork down. "Isn't that your specialty? Handling things without asking?" His jaw tightened just slightly. "Chloe," he said, voice calm but edged, "you asked me to treat you like a person. That includes asking what you want instead of deciding for you." It stung because he was right. I exhaled slowly. "I don't want my family dragged into this," I said. "Liam. My parents. They didn't choose this. I did." "Your family won't be touched," he said immediately. "There are already blocks in place." "Blocks?" I echoed. His eyes cooled. "My legal team has sent notices to outlets that crossed the line. Your parents' names, addresses, employment history, scrubbed. Anyone posts, we take them down." "And me?" I asked quietly. "Do I get scrubbed too?" His gaze held mine. "You're my wife." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters," he said. "They can talk about me. They can talk about us. But they don't get your family." I looked away, out at the city, at the glowing lines of traffic that seemed so far away it was like watching someone else's life. "And what would you do?" I asked softly, "if I said I wanted to answer them myself?" Sebastian didn't move. "How?" "An interview," I said. "A statement. Something." "No." The answer was immediate. My head snapped back to him. "No? There is no benefit," he said. "You speak, They twist your words. You stay silent, they get bored and move on. That's not how it feels from inside my skin, I said. I know, he replied. That's why you have me. There was no arrogance in the way he said it, just that same simple, unnerving certainty. I forced myself to pick up my fork again. So that's it? I just sit at home and let the internet decide what kind of person I am? You keep working, he said. You live your life. And when you walk into a room with my name and my ring and your head held high, the people whose opinions matter will know exactly what kind of person you are. That sounded like something from a motivational poster in a very expensive office. But beneath the polished delivery, I sensed the steel. Sebastian didn't fight on comment sections and gossip sites. He fought on balance sheets and in boardrooms. I didn't marry you to become a ghost, I said. His eyes darkened. You didn't marry me to be eaten alive either. We let the tension hang between us for a moment, stretched thin as wire. Finally, he shifted tactics. Your commissions, he said. You're keeping them. It took me a second to follow. Yes. You don't need to take every job anymore, he said. You can be selective. I don't want to be selective, I said. I like working. I like drawing. I didn't say stop, he replied. I said choose. I've never had the luxury of choosing. Now you do. I wanted to argue. I wanted to reject that help on principle. But the memory of my hands aching from drawing until 3 in the morning stopped me. What do you care? I muttered. How many commissions I take? You're busy sculpting the economy. His mouth twitched, almost like he was fighting a smile. You are my wife, he said. Your time is now a resource that belongs partly to me. My eyes flashed. There it is again. Possession. He didn't flinch. Shared interest, he corrected. If you burn out, I inherit the consequences. The worst part was that buried inside the possessive framing was concern. Real, practical, infuriating concern. We ate in silence for a while, the air between us charged, neither of us willing to retreat. It wasn't until dessert, something delicate and intricate involving chocolate and gold leaf, that he spoke again. You're not moving into the penthouse, he said. I stopped, spoon halfway to my mouth. What? Not yet, he clarified. You stay where you are. With your brother. That was not what I'd expected. I thought rich men dragged their new wives into glass cages immediately, I said. If you move in now, he replied, it sends a message I don't want to send. What message? That you're leaving your old life behind. That you're mine and only mine. That your brother is no longer a factor. His gaze was sharp. He is a factor. He should remain one. Something warm and painful twisted in my chest. You're saying that like it's strategy, I said. It is, he said. But that doesn't make it less true. And what do you get out of that strategy? I asked. His eyes held mine. A wife who doesn't resent me for ripping her away from everything she knows. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. You think that far ahead about resentment? I asked. I think that far ahead about everything, he said. There it was again, the reason this man dominated rooms and markets and headlines. He wasn't just calculating profit. He was calculating people. Including me. Then when do I move in? I asked carefully. He considered me for a moment. When you choose to, he said. Not when I decide. The idea that I had that kind of control in this dizzying situation felt strangely grounding. He relaxed back in his chair, the conversation evidently shifting into a new phase. Your brother, he said. Liam. Has he seen the contract? Yes, I said. And? He doesn't like you, I said honestly. But he respects the numbers. Sebastian's mouth curved very slightly. Good. Good? I repeated. If he liked me too quickly, Sebastian said, I'd be suspicious. A laugh slipped out before I could stop it. He watched me, and something in his expression eased. You're allowed to laugh, he said. It feels dangerous, I admitted. With me, he said quietly, it is always dangerous. The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. I swallowed. So what happens now? He set his fork down, folded his hands, and looked at me like he was presenting a quarterly plan. Now, he said, we build something. Build what? I asked. A marriage, he said simply. On our terms. I didn't know whether to be terrified or curious. So I settled for both. Over the next few weeks, my life split into before and after. Before, I was Chloe Hale, freelance illustrator, perpetually tired, permanently an inch away from some new financial disaster. After, I was Chloe Thorne, still a freelance illustrator, still perpetually tired. But the disaster looming over my head now had a name, a contract, a schedule, and a man who insisted on renegotiating my entire relationship with sleep. "You can't keep working until 2 a.m., Sebastian said one night over the phone, his voice low and irritated. "You have meetings in the morning." "They're my clients," I said, staring at my tablet. "They hired me. I can't just tell them sorry," my rich husband said no. "Tell them you're booked," he said. "Raise your rates. Take fewer projects. I'm not using you as an excuse." "That's not an excuse," he replied. "That's a resource. You're a person, not a." "Chloe," he said, voice dropping into that tone that made my pulse jitter. "You hired a lawyer to protect your rights. Use your husband to protect your time." I hated that it made sense. So we fought. A lot. Quietly, over the phone, over text, in carefully controlled conversations that always stopped just before either of us said something we couldn't take back. At the same time, the world refused to calm down. Old flames of his surfaced in tabloids with smug smiles and carefully staged photos. Anonymous sources claimed I was rude, uneducated, unworthy. Izzy sent me screenshots with furious commentary. "That girl? She wrote under one photo. She cried for 6 months when Sebastian stopped returning her calls. What source is she supposed to be?" I typed back, "Let it go." She replied with 15 skull emojis and, "He doesn't even like lobster." They're lying about that too. The one person who didn't call, text, or show up was Noah. He went silent. Which would have been a relief. If silence didn't feel like a storm gathering just out of sight. One afternoon, while I was working in a cafe, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something made me answer. "Hello? Chloe Hale?" A woman's voice said, crisp and professional. "Yes? This is Dana Price. I host Cityline. We'd love to invite you on the show to talk about your unconventional marriage." My spine snapped straight. "No, thank you," I said immediately. "We understand this might be uncomfortable," she continued smoothly, as if she hadn't heard me. "But we think your story could really empower young women. You know, choosing stability, seizing opportunity." "I'm not interested," I said, fingers tightening around my phone. "We're prepared to offer compensation," she added. "We've also been in touch with someone very close to you who's willing to share his perspective." My blood ran cold. "Who?" I asked quietly. There was a tiny pause, the kind of pause that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. "Noah Reed," she said. "He has some concerns about the power imbalance in your relationship." For a second, the cafe noise faded. The clinking cups, the low chatter, the hiss of the espresso machine, all of it blurred. "Noah. Of course. Ms. Price," I said, my voice oddly calm, "I'm not going on your show. I'm not giving you a soundbite you can cut up into whatever narrative you want. And if you air anything about my family, my lawyers will deal with it." She chuckled softly. "Is that you talking? Or your husband's legal team?" "My husband's legal team works for him," I said. "I speak for me." I hung up before she could answer, my heart racing. My fingers were still shaking when I texted Sebastian. "We need to talk. Now." He called within 30 seconds. "What happened?" he said. I told him. He was silent on the other end for a long moment. Then, "I see. I didn't agree to anything," I said quickly. "I told her no." "I know," he replied. "How do you know?" I demanded. "Because if you'd agreed," he said, "you wouldn't have called me first. You would have called Izzy to panic and then tried to handle it alone." The accuracy was offensive. "Are you going to destroy their show?" I asked. "If they push this," he said, voice turning glacial, "they'll regret it." "What about Noah?" I whispered. There was a pause. When Sebastian spoke again, his voice was flat. "He's about to learn the difference between loyalty and entitlement." I pressed my lips together. Don't ruin his life because of me. He's doing that on his own, Sebastian said. I'm just going to close a few doors he was never qualified to walk through in the first place. Sebastian. Chloe. Something in the way he said my name made me stop. This is not your fault, he said, slower now. He's an adult. He's making choices. Bad ones. Do not bleed for people who choose to hurt you. The bluntness of it sliced through my guilt. I exhaled, shaky. Can you stop them from dragging my parents into it? I asked. Yes. Then that's all I want, I said. He was quiet for a second. Noted, he said. I'll handle the rest. And he did. Within 2 days, the City Line rumor fizzled out into nothing. No teaser trailers, no leaked segments, nothing. I checked their social feeds obsessively. Silence. A week later, Noah's father quietly stepped down from a mid-level position at a company that just happened to do contract work with Thorn Industries. I didn't ask Sebastian if those things were connected. I already knew. I should have been horrified. Part of me was. Another part, the part that had spent months waking up in cold sweats wondering how I'd keep my family afloat, felt something dangerously close to relief. Power, once it was on your side, was addictive. The first time I saw Sebastian lose his composure, it wasn't in a boardroom, or over a business deal. It was over me. We were at a charity gala downtown, the kind with glass sculptures and floral arrangements that cost more than my first car. I was there in a dress I had actually agreed to wear, a breathtaking thing in deep emerald green that made my eyes look brighter and my shoulders bare. Sebastian stood beside me like a sentry, one hand resting lightly at the small of my back, guiding but not gripping. Cameras flashed. People murmured. Introductions blurred together. This is my wife, Chloe, he said over and over, the word wife rolling off his tongue like it had always been there. Some people smiled warmly. Some offered Botox stiff congratulations. Some women looked me up and down and decided instantly they didn't like me. I kept my head up. I didn't flinch. Halfway through the night, when my cheeks ached from polite smiles and my feet hurt in ways I hadn't known were possible, I slipped away to a side corridor to breathe. That's where I heard it. Honestly, a woman's voice drawled, low and amused, I give it a year. A second voice, male, snorted. You're generous. I give it 6 months. They dragged some nobody out of a sketchbook and put a ring on her finger, the woman continued. Do you really think she understands his world? Sebastian changes companies more often than she probably changes brushes. They laughed. I should have walked away. Instead, I stepped around the corner. The woman froze mid-smirk when she saw me. Tall, perfectly coiffed, eyes sharp behind smoky makeup. The man beside her, a hedge fund someone, if I remembered correctly, cleared his throat awkwardly. I smiled. I do change my brushes a lot, I said. They wear out when you use them. Color crept up his neck. The woman lifted her chin. We were just talking about the market, she said smoothly. Nothing personal. Of course, I said. The market's always more interesting than actual people. Her lips tightened. Before she could respond, a familiar presence warmed the air beside me. Sebastian. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't touched me. But somehow, in the space of a heartbeat, he was there. Lydia, he said, his tone polite enough to cut glass. If you have concerns about my personal life, you can bring them to me directly instead of discussing them where my wife can hear. Lydia flushed. I didn't. You did, he said. And normally, I don't care what you say. But you made one mistake. Her throat bobbed. Which is? He rested a hand at the base of my spine, fingers warm through the fabric of my dress. You underestimated my wife's intelligence, he said. That's sloppy, coming from you. I blinked. That was not the defense I'd expected. Lydia's gaze flicked between us, eyes narrowing. We were joking, she said stiffly. This is a party, Sebastian. People talk. Yes, he said. They do. His eyes cooled. Walk carefully on your way out, Lydia. I'd hate for you to trip over the line you're standing on. Her jaw clenched. The man beside her muttered something about needing a drink and fled. Lydia followed, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm across the marble. When they were gone, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. Yes, he said. I did. I could have handled it. I know, he replied. You were handling it. Then why? Because I wanted them to remember, he said, eyes still on the crowd, that you're not here alone. You are not prey at their table. I stared at him. His jaw was tight, the muscles working. His grip on my back trembled just slightly. It hit me then, in a way it hadn't fully before. He wasn't just using me as a shield. He was, in his own warped, controlled way, trying to shield me too. I swallowed. Does it bother you? What? Them talking, I said. Saying I'm after your money. That this is a joke. That I'm going to embarrass you. His gaze finally dropped to mine. What bothers me, he said slowly, is that they think they have the right to say anything at all. You're used to it, I said. You've lived in this world forever. That doesn't make it acceptable, he said. We stood there for a moment, the din of the ballroom fading to a dull hum. Do you regret it? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Marrying me? His brow furrowed. No. You didn't even think about it, I said. I already thought about it, he replied. For years. My breath caught. He watched the realization dawn across my face. You really don't understand, do you? He asked quietly. Understand what? That for me, he said, this isn't a contract. It's a conclusion. I felt suddenly unsteady, like the floor had shifted. Sebastian, I whispered, what did you do? He tilted his head slightly. Exactly what you signed for. I thought about that all the way home. Thought about it when I washed my face, when I hung up my dress, when I slid into bed in a room that still smelled like my old life. And later, when I woke in the middle of the night to find my phone buzzing with a message from an unknown number, I was already too tired to be cautious. The message was a photo. My father. Sitting in a cafe with a man whose face I recognized from 100 grainy business articles. The partner who'd walked away just before our company went under. Underneath the photo was a single line. Do you really know why your family went bankrupt? I sat up, heart pounding, fingers cold. A second message followed almost immediately. Ask your husband who bought your debt first. The room felt suddenly smaller. I swallowed hard and did the one thing I had not done since all of this began. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands, and then, without overthinking it, pressed Sebastian's name and waited. He answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. Chloe? I got a message, I said, my voice shaking. Someone sent me a photo of my dad and forwarded it to me, he said, fully awake now. I did. There was a pause on the line. I see, he said. My throat worked. Is it true? Yes, he said. My heart dropped. You bought our debt? Yes. How long, I whispered, have you been waiting to tell me that? Silence hummed between us. Finally, he spoke. From the beginning, he said. And I was hoping I wouldn't have to. I sank into a chair. Why? I asked. Why would you hide that? Because I knew what you'd think, he said quietly. You'd think I engineered your bankruptcy. That I trapped you. Did you? I asked, voice barely audible. He didn't hesitate. No. Something about the immediacy of it made my eyes sting. Then why buy the debt? I whispered. Why get involved at all? His voice, when it came, was softer than I'd ever heard it. Because your father was being set up, he said. And when I realized who was doing it, it was already too late to stop the fall. All I could do was control where you landed. The room tilted. Who was doing it? I asked. There was a pause, heavy and deliberate. My father, he said. I went very, very still. In the quiet hum of my kitchen, clutching my phone with white-knuckled hands, I felt the ground shift again. Only this time, it wasn't just under my feet. It was under both of us.